So it's good to be here, good to be with you guys. Real quick, we're going to walk through the teaching portion, then Anne and the team are going to lead us in worship, and then we'll close out today by praying over our educators and our students, any of our kids that are in the room today. Today is sort of a day where we invite our kids, teachers upstairs, and we just want to pray over families and those that are here with us in person, those that are joining us live. We want to just be able to speak life over our kids, speak life over our teachers, and we just want this year to be a peaceful year in the San Francisco School District. We want to partner with our city in that way and pray over our city and its students. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think that's a beautiful thing. So if you have your Bibles, let's open the book of Daniel, chapter 10. You can always follow along and take some notes. Or if you don't have a Bible today, you can download the app right now from San Francisco Lighthouse, and there's a Bible in the app. So that's going to make that very simple for you. So you can search SF Lighthouse in your favorite app store, Google or Android, and you can read the Bible right inside the app. So that will help. So a little background, we set this up. We're going to be teaching from Daniel chapter 10 moments today. A little background. Daniel was in his 80s at this point. He was, in fact, in the story of Daniel in the lion's den, we think of in terms of him being a small child, but he was already up in years at this point, and he's even older than that in the story that we're talking today. So he's an older man, and he's literally, for decades upon decades, he's been standing like firmly in the faith, praying and believing that God will do some really cool stuff, some miracles. And King Nebuchadnezzar had destroyed the temple and captured so many of his friends and fellow comrades, and he was praying for their release and praying that God would restore that temple, and that that his Jewish brothers and sisters who had been now in bondage for all these years would be released to go back to their homeland. And there were some signs that this was beginning to actually happen. So this is where this is at. And so Daniel chapter 10, we're starting to feel some positive signs that this could all actually work out. But all of a sudden, he received a vision from God that was so disturbing to him that all he could do was seek God in prayer. Have you ever had all of a sudden moments where all you know to do is pray? That's like, I don't even know what to do. And sometimes some of you go and maybe you process even prayer differently. Maybe you feel that and you stop and you contemplate and you meditate and you begin to process what just happened. That's all he could do was seek God for understanding. He saw a vision. So if you're looking for peace and you see a vision that is actually the opposite of what you're looking for, that could be disturbing. And so he was looking for peace and for restoration of his homeland, but he saw a vision of more war and hardships, and he's like, okay, I've been praying for decades now, and I see more hard times are coming. I can't take this. And so Daniel did what Daniel always did. Daniel sought God in prayer. And this is where we actually talk about and we reflect corporately together. There are seasons of time, even in Lighthouse community, that we have special times of prayer and fasting. Daniel fasted in this story for 21 days. He went on a fast. And there are people in this community that fast for lengthy periods of time, processing and considering, what is God saying to me? What's going on in my life? How can I make sense of the chaos in my life? And usually the answer only comes through times of prayer and setting aside time for God. So Daniel did that. Now we normally, here we do it at different times of the year, but normally we do a corporate fast at the beginning of the year. The story, actually, the scripture says that he didn't wear any fragrant perfume or fragrance during this time. What that really means is he didn't take a bath for like 21 days. And so I just want to go on record to say, is normally when I fast, you should be clearly I do bathe during my fast. Just so you know that. I've heard Pastor Jeff Garner does it, but I can't speak for him. You'll have to take that up with him personally. So you went on a very long one last year. I don't know. You never reported in on that. Did you actually bathe during that 40 days, Doctor? There's no answer. That's scary. Okay. Yeah. So I believe so. Here we go. In Daniel 10, we're not in Daniel 10 when I read this to you. We're not really even sure who the angelic being is. I believe along with a lot of biblical scholars. I'll put myself right in that. I believe, like many of my fellow scholars, that was going to be a joke. Okay, that this was probably a pre-incarnate Christ. Maybe you would say, what does that mean? Well, if you remember, the Bible says that God was there before the foundation of the world. God is a mystery. You can always explain it. And There were wars fought over people thinking they understand God. And so God is a mystery we can't fully explain. But in the Old Testament scripture, the old sacred text, it tells us he was here before the very foundation of the world. God, before there was anything, God was. So in the Old Testament, there are times that where it appears that Christ appears in the Old Testament. And this is known as, at least you can leave today and go, well, I learned something. This is known as Christophany or Christophany. Like an epiphany, but a Christophany, a Christophany. And that's a theological word you can bring up next time in your BC. And that's you can use that. God bless you with that. And so we don't know for sure, but I'm going to preach today and teach as if it were Jesus in Christ. Because if I'm going to err, I'm going to err on the side of it being Christ, because that just seems smart to me. It's kind of like that kid in Sunday school. The Sunday school teacher said, okay, class, what's brown and has a fluffy tail and runs up trees and eats nuts? And the kid said, Jesus? And the teacher's like, no, it's a squirrel. Well, it sounded like a squirrel, but I figured that God would want me to go with Jesus since I'm in church. So anyway, it sounded like a squirrel, but we're going to go with Jesus. Here's the deal. I don't know exactly what this, but I'm going to go with Jesus. I think that's the safest bet we have. Let's go with Jesus. So here's the vision. Daniel chapter 10, verse 5 through 8. Let's look at it together. Here we go. Verse 5. I looked up and saw a man dressed in linen clothing. Now, if you get lost, I'm sure translation you read, but whatever it is, just follow along. It should be fine. I looked up and saw a man dressed in linen clothing with a belt of pure gold around his waist. His body looked like a precious gem. His face flashed like lightning, and his eyes flamed like torches. His arms and feet shined like polished bronze, and his voice roared like a vast multitude of people. Only I, Daniel, saw this vision. This is interesting to me. The men with me saw nothing, but they were suddenly terrified and ran away to hide. So I was left there all alone to see this amazing vision. It's really interesting to me that Daniel was the only one that saw the vision. The other guys didn't see it. I mean, why is that? Well, we don't know for sure, but what we do know is this. There are often times that God will reveal things to people around in the community, around that maybe not everyone else will see or get. That, in fact, for all of you who've been followers of Christ for a while, there are chances at some point in your life, God showed you something, you felt an impression, you felt something close, you felt something strong that was really powerful. Might be, you're reading through the Bible, and there was this verse that, like, you've seen it 10 times before, but this time the verse was like, that's for you right now. And it's almost like something bold-faced, and you're like, oh my God, it's amazing. That just speaks to you. You've read that 10 other times, but that day, on that moment, you're like, this is really special. You look at your friends, you're like, hey, this is amazing. Let me read this to you. And you read it to them, they're like, yeah. Can you get some coffee? Right? I mean, because they're like, the coffee's good in the back, I hear it's great, and let's just check out. So you don't see. I mean, how is it I see it and you don't, right? That's often the reality. And the truth is, God will show things to people at times and it's often others will not see that are closest to you. And God will reveal something to you that you want them to get, but they will not get it until God is ready for them to get it. Does that make sense? Yes. And so you just like, I can't believe it. There could be a song. Like there was, I don't know how this may not make sense to you, but for like a couple of years, every time I looked at the clock, it was like 9/11. And I was like, I looked at the clock, it's like 9/11, 9/11. My son was born on 9/11. Anyway, I thought it was kind of cool. You don't see it? It must have been just me. Okay. It can be a song or a message or a moment with God, and you're like, that's the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life. In a moment, when we're going to worship, some of you will have moments with God where you could have the same encounter. You could feel something. You could sense something. You could have been praying for something for years, and during worship, in one moment, you're like, I know what I need to do. I know how to make this work. And you sense the presence of God, and you might lean over to the person beside you, and you might say, man, that is so good. Don't you get that? And you're like, man, I'm checking out. I'm going to the lobby because I use the restroom. And you're like, what happened? This is what happened to Daniel. Daniel, they didn't experience it. It was spoken. It was a vision. They didn't experience it. And I believe with all my heart that some of you today could have a moment just like that where you're going to hear something and feel something and process something that you know is from God. It's like the heavens open up and God is speaking directly to you. And you may ask others, wasn't that the best thing? And they'll be like, well, I do remember that squirrel joke. That was great. That was kind of funny. I mean, It's kind of corny. That was kind of cute. I mean, you can tell he's like a Cajun, funny guy, thinks he's funny. That was all right, but I don't get it. And you're like, it was amazing. And the reason you're going to hear it is because God wants to show you something. And the reason that they're not going to hear it is it's not their time to hear it yet. Don't get frustrated over the fact that everyone in your sphere of influence is not hearing what you're hearing. And Daniel has that moment. In verse 8, read that. In the middle of this, he says, and here he's in the presence of Christ, of this angelic being, and he says, my strength left me. My face grew deathly pale, and I felt very weak. That's interesting. Watch what happens. Verse 9. Then I heard the man speak. And when I heard the sound of his voice, I fainted and lay there with my face to the ground. And that's powerful. Something just happened. Something powerful happened. I heard the sound of his voice, and I could no longer stand. And I fell face down. What's this all about? Listen, the strongest men cannot bear the weight of the glory of God. I mean, the strongest. If you've ever had a moment deeply in the presence of God, listen, you lose strength. You don't want to stand. There's something powerful that happens. I don't know, maybe some of you have been followers of Christ for a while. I hope you've had moments like this where you sense the presence of God. You sense the presence of God. You might maybe be able to explain what it is you're feeling, or be able to identify a name of what you're feeling. And what you're feeling in this room, the sense of community and camaraderie and the sense of love. Here's the beautiful thing about the community of Christ, is that the people in this room, we come from every background, from every social background, every religious background, every color, every creed, every race. We are a community full of people that come from there are people in this room that love Jesus. There are people here that have just now met him for the first time. We are a room full of variety, to say the least. The only thing that can bring us together is the love of God that we feel toward him, toward her, toward us, toward everything. We cannot make this thing work without God's love present in the room. Amen. That's what we feel. We feel that. We're like, how can it make sense? How do we make this all work? The love of God. In a moment of God, you're overwhelmed by his comfort and by his presence and by his assurance. And you just don't want it to end. It's like if you've ever had a moment that you don't want to end. Like, have you ever had that moment? Like, I can paint a picture. There have been some moments with the lady in the back of the room, and I'm just like, I could sing, but I'm not going to sing. I could sing moments like, I could sing a song like, from this moment. And I could just like get lost. I could look at her eyes and go, may this moment never end. And somebody going, get a job. Right? There are moments that you have in life. Like, honestly, when I stood at the birth of my firstborn, even is here. Like, there's something that happens in that moment. So all of you families that are your parents, you get this. Like, if you could press pause on what you felt the moment that life came into the world, and you had some little thing to do with it, not as much as you thought, but just a little, you would press pause and just, you could just hold it there, and you would look at it from every angle and see every facet of this incredible moment and just absorb it. Then if you could like put it in a bottle and drink it every day, and it just upset you, if you could do that with that moment, you would do it. There was nothing like it. Like, nothing like the birth of my kids. If I could grab that moment, I would never let it go. There are moments that we have like that in life. And I call those moments, those are supernatural moments, aren't they? Those are supernatural moments. I always experience these moments, especially at births, weddings. Not too long ago, I was able to be on the side of the hill with the Golden Gate with Andy and Scott. You know what you feel in those moments? You feel that you should keep those moments forever. Because of the love of family around you and the beautiful landscape of a beautiful city and two beautiful hearts coming together. Can you just grab that and hold it? That's a moment. That's a supernatural moment. We have moments similar to that. And I've had a couple of those moments in my life. I've had maybe more than a couple. And here's the truth of it. I've had some really great times in the presence of God. But if I'm being honest, how many of you also know that sin can be fun? You're like, wait, can we talk about that in church? Listen, here's the truth. Sin can be fun. Raise your hands if you've enjoyed that. Okay, you guys are like, what do here? Can I do this in church? That was fun. No, but it wasn't fun. Really fun. Well, here's what we know. We know that sin can be fun, but for a season. It doesn't last forever. And here's what happens. Normally, we have sin for a moment, and it's so good, and we're like, that was so great. Then it subsides and goes away, and we're like, if I could just recreate that, so we could do that again and again and again. And it never is what it was the first time. It just seems to continue on in that pattern of I'm looking for something else. If you don't think sin's fun, then I think you're probably lying, or you didn't do it right, because it can be fun for a while. Then it'll mess you up. And it messed me up. I mean, sin will mess you up. But that's why I'm thankful for personal encounters with the supernatural God. Like as a young boy, searching for identity and searching for who I was and searching for what life means. And there are moments that there are still more questions than there are answers. But what has been the thing that has sustained me through the questions is that there has been a moment where I've had encounters with the supernatural presence of God that was sustainable through the difficulties. And it's because God was sovereign. And I had a personal encounter at very strategic moments in my life. And I can look back at a specific moment in general. There was a moment I was at a gathering of believers similar to this. And it was very interesting. My father-in-law was speaking on the stage. He's a pastor. He was preaching. And then I had stood near the front of the altar, and I was standing off to the right, and I was just praying my own little way. And what he didn't know was I was praying for direction. Now, I didn't know he was my father-in-law, to be honest. So late before he was ever my father-in-law, he was just a preacher. And he was on stage preaching. I was a young kid at a youth gathering, and I came up to the front, and I stood there, and I was praying for direction in my life. I was actually praying, God, what will you do with my life? And my future father-in-law shouts. I can hear him. I'm with God, I'm praying, but I hear him shout at the person beside me who happens to be a pastor. He shouted at that pastor and said, hey, Dan, I want you to pray over Jeff. And Dan he's a pastor that eventually I was the pastor of the church that my father-in-law pastored and that Dan pastored and then I pastored. And it was like that moment where I was like, and neither one of them, this was a year when I was a kid, that moment of alignment happened. Do you understand what I'm saying? I stepped into a place where it was like supernatural. And years later, I look back and I go, wow, that was alignment. I married her and I pastored him. I married his daughter. My father-in-law. It was a personal encounter with God. It was supernatural. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't understand it all, but it was a moment. There are moments like that my Kel and I have experienced with so many of you in this community and so many places around this city. From the time I could even think in terms of cities, it's been about San Francisco and being with Dr. Jeff and being a part of you and seeing what God would do in this great city. That's always been in our life. There are moments, encounters with God, that it's just clear. It gets clear for a moment, and I realize that the fog rolls in like a San Francisco day, and Carl comes more than we want Carl to come. But there's clarity, and then Carl, and then clarity, and then there's Carl. You know what I'm talking about? But if it weren't the moments and the clarity where there was a little bit of God that he goes, Jeff, I'm going to give you this moment because the fog is going to roll in and you're going to walk in the dark, but you're going to have a moment to remember, a personal moment with you. And some of you, and what I'm praying that happens for you, every one of you, I'm praying that our kids have, is that if they have nothing else in life, they would have a personal encounter with the supernatural God who can give them clarity in the middle of the fog. I mean, it may not be for many, but you're going to hear something that's going to move you. So what I want to do, just in the next 5 minutes, is give something practical to all of us. I want to talk about, so how does this apply to our life? How do we continue to stand when the fog rolls in? How do we stand firm in the faith when we're praying, we don't see anything happen? We're going to see things. Here's the deal. You will see things, and then there will be fog rolled in, and you'll wonder, where did it go? Where did the clarity go? And I've been praying about this answer, and then there's no clarity. And what God wants you to understand is that the moment that you prayed the very first time, God heard you, and God started working on your behalf. Amen. So number one, here's something I want you to remember. This is for everyone, so take notes. young adults, kids, families, everyone's good for all of us. I want you to remember this. Number one, you always need to remember that God cares about you more than you care about yourself. God cares about you even more than you care about yourself. Verse 10 says this. Daniel says, just then a hand touched me. Verse 10. Just then a hand touched me and did what? Now, what did the hand do? Now, if I could sing like some people can, like if I had a voice like some of you like Bill, if I could sing like Bill, I would be really, really famous. I'm just telling you right now. I would be really, really famous. And if I could really sing like Bill, an organ would start in the background of right now. And I would sing the songs of an old and famous hymn. But since I can't sing, I will not do that. Because if I did, you would not come back. But what I am going to do is I'm going to read the words of this hymn. And I love everybody, but I hate preachers who can sing and preach. It's just not fair. It makes me sick. There's nothing godly about those people. I just can't do it. But anyway, here's the words of the song. I'm not even going to attempt to sing it, but there was this one song. I may try to sing it. Here we go. Old. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I want to. Yes, I'm having more dilemma. I really want to do it, but I'm not. Should I do it? Come on. No, Bill, do you know the song Love Lifted Me? Nope. Okay. Then you can't. That was going to be my out. But Bill, you know it, so you can do it. Let's kind of do this. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. Ooh. When nothing else could help. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. That's the preachers who can sing and preach. Very much. Hear the words. The hand of God never extends to condemn. And the hand of God never touches to condemn. The hand of God always extends and touches to lift. Amen. And this is what David says, verse 10. Just then, the hand touched me and lifted me. What I always pray happens when we come together is that the hand of God would touch you. But when you feel the hand of God, if it's condemnation, that's not the hand of God. The hand of God always reaches to lift and to encourage and to bring hope. And what I hope happens for some of you in this room is that you feel the hand of God. What I hope happens all year long for our families and our kids is that throughout the year, when they're in the middle of a difficult day, on a difficult Monday or a difficult Thursday, I hate Thursdays, difficult Thursdays, when those days happen, they remember, number one, that God always loves us more than we love ourselves, and that God's hand always lifts us and never condemns us. Amen. And Daniel said, verse 11, and the man said to me, Daniel, you are very precious to God. Daniel, you are very precious to God. Some of you, this is your moment. Like, you need to hear this. Young, old, everybody in this room, you need to hear this. You are precious to God. Look at the person beside you and tell them, you're precious to God. Because this is the second time they've heard it. They just heard it now the second time. You're precious to God. You are. And that's what you must hear. This is why you're here today. That's why you're here. You are valuable to God. That word precious means valuable. He loves you. He cares about you. You are precious to Him. Here's the deal. There's nothing you can do to make Him love you more. There's nothing you can do to make Him love you less. He loves you just because it's not just what He does. It's who He is. You are valuable. You are precious to God. You are precious to God. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I love a lot of people. If you guys know me, I'm a loving kind of fellow. I love a lot of people. But some people not precious to me. I mean, look, I love my Lyft driver. But if I see he's going off a cliff, I'm getting out the car. I was in a Lyft not too long ago. We got some good Lyft drivers in San Francisco, thank God. But I was one not too long that I was like, we were helping him. Like, look, you can't turn left there. You got to go up one more. And I was like, if one more, we almost got the red light 2 or 3 times. I'm like, one more, I'm out, done. Like, just open the door, get out the red light, and just leave him and say, I love you, but you ain't precious to me. I will leave you. My children are precious. Like, this is something that, listen, children, kids, I don't know, you probably can't understand this. And you will, eventually. But you are precious. There is nothing that a loving father and a loving mother would not do to make sure their kids are okay. Love our kids. They're precious to me. And that's that same kind of love that God looks to us with. You are precious to God. He cares about you. He cares about you even more than you care about you. You are precious to God. And here's the thing. Christ says, when he said this to me, he touched me. He lifted me. And then he says, when he said this to me, I stood up trembling. When you are trying to stand in a difficult time, standing in the face of Carl, looking for clarity, you got to remember that God loves you more than you love yourself. His hand never condemns. And here's the thing. I love this. I love this with all my heart. God is doing more than you understand. You got to get this. God is doing more than you understand. He's doing way more than you can possibly understand. This is what's really cool. Verse 12. Then Christ said, the angelic being said, to me, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just the first day you pray, just the first moment you pray for understanding and to humble yourself before God. Your request was heard in heaven. That's the very first time you pray. You gotta hear that. Whatever you pray in your life, doesn't matter what it is, the first time you ever prayed, if the first time you ever knelt down beside your bed and you said, now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. I hate this prayer, by the way. What a morbid prayer. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. That's encouraging. But here's what I do know. God heard you. From the smallest of voices to the most frail of voices to the most strong of voices, God hears you. I know that when you knelt down before your bed, whatever you prayed, God heard you. And maybe you don't see it. Maybe the fog rolled in and you're like, I don't see it. I don't see nothing. Remember, God loves you more than you love yourself. And the second thing is God always sends his hand to live. The third thing, God always is doing more than you understand. God is up to something you can't even see. And God heard the first time you prayed. Here's a lot of you prayed for something. Years ago, I prayed. I said, God, I want to be in your will no matter what. Here's the truth of that. There's been a lot of no matter what. But I'm in his will. Because it isn't always easy. And when you say yes to God, that includes some no matter what. That includes some difficult. That includes some moments standing on the beach and not seeing the ocean because of the fog. That means a lot. But there are a lot of those moments in my relationship with God. But I do know this, that God has proven faithful to me. He loves me more than I love myself. He's never condemned me. He's always showed up, and he is doing more than I can understand. God is up to something big in your life that you don't even see. Like God is up to something so big in your life that you cannot even begin to process. There are no coincidences in the kingdom of God. The word doesn't even exist in the kingdom of God language. It's not even in the Hebrew language. There's no coincidence because everything that happens because God wills it to happen. And that's going to get a little bit Star Wars weird for the next 2 minutes. Here we go. Verse 13. Is that the thing? Star Wars weird? That is the thing. I've met you. It's Star Wars weird. Verse 13. Christ, or the angelic being, says, but for 21 days, the spirit prince of the kingdom of Persia blocked my way. That's interesting. Then Michael, one of the archangels, came to kick some butt on my behalf. I didn't do that. That's not what it says. But he did come to help me. I left him there with the spirit prince of the kingdom of Persia. This is interesting. If you've been praying a long time about something, if you've been praying a long time about something, for those of you who've been praying so long that you wonder if it's even worth it, if for those of you praying so long, you hear the voice in the back of your head that says, why even bother? God doesn't care. I mean, if God wanted to do something, wouldn't he have already done it a long time ago? You're praying, and you feel like you're just wasting your breath. God's not listening. He's not going to do it. It must not be his will. I want to talk to you right now. Those in this room that you've been praying for something a long time, you've got something in your heart. And what I want you to understand is the very first time you prayed, God heard your cry.
Amen.
The very first time. The first time you prayed for healing for that person you love, God heard your prayer. The first time you prayed for your child, God heard that prayer. And you begged God to do a miracle, God heard your prayer. The first time you prayed, our Father heard your prayer. Our God loves a consistent prayer, of course, but He loves when we continue to cry out to Him. He loves the faithful prayer, sure, but the first time, everyone say the first time that you prayed, God heard you. The first time you prayed, He heard you. Verse 13, this is cool, that's what it's all about. But for 21 days, the Spirit, how many days was that? 21? How many days did Daniel fast? 21. For 21 days, the Spirit of the Prince of Persia blocked my way. I mean, we're not sure what the Prince of the Kingdom of Persia is. I mean, what most Bible scholars believe is this some sort of demonic dark force, and that's probably true. If you'll remember, some of the angels rebelled against God in their early days. These are known as fallen angels. Many of you believe that the non-demonic forces do battle the kingdom today. Some of you don't believe that. Whatever you do believe, I know this. There's a lot of stuff that shouldn't happen that ain't happening when I want it to happen. Why is it stuff doesn't happen right when I want it to happen? Because I'm not providential. I don't know everything. What we have to remember is that we battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. In other words, what you see with your eyes is not all there is. Right. Don't ever believe that there's just a physical realm. Like, there's more than that. For 21 days you prayed. Christ was sent and was doing battle. Then Michael came as an archangel and he battled with me. So he said this, the angelic being says, I left him there. You deal with this prince from Persia. I'm going to Daniel as an answer to prayer. Here's what's so powerful to me, and this moved me so deeply in my heart. Think about this. Daniel prayed. He continued to pray. He continued to pray. And what did he see? Not one thing. And it's when we don't see anything that we begin to doubt. We don't see anything. It messes with our faith. But just because he didn't see it did not mean God was not up to something. I don't know if you're sitting here, I don't even know how you've been praying, but I do know this. You've been crying out to God. I know you. I know your stories. You've been crying out to God, and you haven't begun to see the things you want to see. And then some of you were praying, and you're seeing things you didn't want to see. And that's also God taking care of it. But just because you're not seeing it does not mean God is not up to something. He releases on his own time, and you just keep praying, and you just keep believing, and you may not see anything, and you have no idea what kind of battle is going on in the heavens. But from a God who loves you so much, he's working behind the scenes to do things you can't see, that you wouldn't even understand, because he cares about you. 21 days earlier, when Daniel saw nothing, there was a battle in the heavens, because heaven heard his prayer the very first time he prayed. Feel the power of that. I don't know how this would apply to you, but if God cares about the smallest of things, he cares about everything. He cares about the things you're petitioning for. How do you keep standing in faith? And this is the last thing I'll tell you is this. The third thing is this. Or the fourth thing is number 4. God's strength is made perfect in your weakness. Like, his strength is made perfect in your weakness. In fact, it's a New Testament principle. Paul actually said, in your weakness, his strength is made perfect. Some of you, you're going to come to a place in your faith where you feel like you've got nothing left, that you're at the end of your rope. Let me tell you something. That's when you're the strongest. When you're at the end of your rope, not in your own power, but that's when you will feel the power from somewhere else, from something else. From somewhere else in the heavens, you will feel the power come that you've never experienced before. You will never appreciate until you fully embrace your weakness. You never appreciate His strength. When you recognize, I've prayed, I don't have any more faith, I don't have any more strength, and I'm at the end of myself, that's when His power becomes more real than ever. I'll close this conversation that Michael and I had in a car in front of a business in Dallas, Texas, a year ago, May or June. We knew for years we wanted to come and walk alongside your pastor, Joe. That's what we wanted to do. But at every step of the way, it felt like there was a block. We would pray for it, and then God would block it. We would pray for it, and our faith would fail. We would pray for it, and it seemed impossible. We were sitting in front of a business, and Michael and I both looked at each other and we said, that's it. we give up. We give that up, God. If it's to happen, it'll have to be you. We give it up. We're going to live here in Dallas. We're going to be happy. You ever had that moment where you're like, just put a smile on your face. Get over it. We're going to be happy. Here. Next to hell. Hot. We're going to be happy though. In the middle of, well, I could go down the whole, there's a lot of things I could say about that. We're going to be happy though. It was not a month later that I was talking to him on the phone. He's like, hey, would you guys come over? I'm going to take some baths and take some time. Would you guys come sort of walk alongside? I don't know where you'll live yet, but we'll figure that out. And we'll just look. There'll be a place. Just come on. We'll figure it out. And we started coming in and out over the course of a few months. And then God worked it out for us to get here. And then everything worked out. It felt so easy. It felt so easy. It felt so comfortable. It felt like that there was an answer that was given. It felt like we had prayed a long time ago. We gave that up, and then God did the work. And here's what he did. Verse 18, here's what's going to happen when I close this. Andy, you guys can come save me if you'd like. Some of you, this might capture exactly where you are right now. I want you to say this out loud, because for some of you, it will be difficult for you to ever say it without some help. So I'm going to help you. Okay? So I'd like you to say it like this. Everyone repeat after me. Say, I am not as strong as I think I am. Let's repeat twice more time. My strength is almost gone. Like that's some of you just said that. I'd like you to start saying your way, behaving your way into the truth of that. Because the truth of it is, you're not as strong as you think you are. And you were never built to be that strong. You were built to get exactly where you are. You're not strong enough. And your strength's almost gone. And then here's what happens. Verse 18. Then the one who looked like a man did what? Everybody say this aloud. He did what? He touched me. Say, he touched me. What happened? Here's what Daniel said. And I felt my strength returning. When he touched me again, I felt my strength returning. Don't miss the power of this. When he touched me, I felt the strength in my heart returning. Some of you, all you need is this is it. Right there. What you need is for one moment for God to touch you again. And when he does, your faith is restored and you feel your strength come back. One touch and you're coming back. One touch, you're believing again. And what we need to have happen is we need every day of this year. I need in my family, in my Kellenhouse family, we need the hand of God to touch my daughter and my son every day. When our strength is becoming weak and we've come to the end of ourselves, we need the hand of God. Every family in this room, what you need more than anything, you don't need the latest and greatest. You don't even need to have the right anything. What you need is a moment and a touch from God. Amen. In one moment, a touch from God changes everything. Some of you have been believing for a long time for some stuff and it hadn't happened. You're trying to figure out why, and you'll never figure out why. Listen, just take me. I am 40 years old, and I am still trying to figure out why. +7. Just hate saying that. I always feel like I'm owed. I feel younger than that. I should be able to say whatever I want to say. Age is relative. I do know this. A lot of things I don't know. But here's one thing I do know. That there are moments in my family that if we didn't have a moment with God, everything else is futile. Everything else is flat. Everything else fades away. There are moments, key moments, when we pray a prayer and God moved. Would you all stand? We're about to move into our worship segment. And for the next few minutes, we're going to worship together. What I would like you to do is, while you're worshiping today, I would like you to just, if you could own your weakness for a moment. Own your weakness. Be okay with not being strong enough. Be okay with not being big enough. Be okay with being a little weak in this moment and rely on God. And if you could, in this next few moments, if you could, listen and lean into the worship and lean into the presence of God and search for that moment with God when your weakness meets His strength and God does in a moment what we can't do in a lifetime. Let God heal you. Let God touch you. And while we're worshiping, if you have needs of prayer and you want someone to pray with you, step in the back. We have a table back there that we just pray with people. You step back there and we'll agree with you and pray specifically with you. That happens every Sunday. But in this moment, I want us to lean into worship and allow the Spirit of God. The greatest thing we need is an encounter with God. You don't even have to know how to pronounce His name. You don't even have to, here's what's amazing, you don't even have to understand Him. The more important thing is, you don't even have to qualify at all. Here's what He says about Himself. If you ask, if you knock, if you seek, you'll get it. Well, I don't know how to actually pray right. That's okay. Just ask, and God will show up. But I don't know how to do the thing. I'm not a religious person. That's cool. You don't have to know how. You just have to ask. Amen. I bet you're a seeker. I bet if you're a seeker, you're a finder. So Heavenly Father, I pray right now that over the next few minutes, that the presence of God will make up for every lack in wisdom or in speech. That the presence of God will make up for anything lacking in this moment. That you would engage and encounter every man, woman, and child in this room. I pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.